Take a look at the water you drink, the pan you use to cook your breakfast, the raincoat you put on your child. You trust them. You think they are safe. But what if I told you that hidden inside those everyday objects is an indestructible, highly toxic chemical, a chemical that, right now, is flowing through the bloodstream of 99% of human beings on Earth, including you. This isn't a tragic accident. It is the result of a calculated multi-billion-dollar monopoly, a secret strictly guarded by one of the most powerful corporations in American history, simply because the truth was too expensive to tell. Welcome to the breakdown. To understand how a massive corporate empire managed to poison the entire globe, we have to follow the money. And the money trail starts in 1938. The world was changing, and at the center of it all was an industrial titan, DuPont. They weren't just a company. They were the architects of modern chemistry. And in one of their labs, a scientist stumbled upon a miracle, a substance completely immune to water, oil, and extreme heat. They called it PFOA, or C8, but their marketing department gave it a much friendlier name, Teflon. Teflon wasn't just a product, it was a financial revolution. It birthed $1 billion global market overnight. Suddenly, C8 was in everything. Frying pans, waterproof jackets, fast food wrappers, firefighting foam. For DuPont, C8 was the ultimate cash cow. It printed money faster than the Federal Reserve. It gave them a global monopoly that most CEOs could only dream of. But miracles always have a price. And behind the smiling advertisements and record-breaking profits, DuPont's top executives were hiding a terrifying reality. A reality locked away in their private vaults, known only to a select few. Let's unlock that vault. It's the early 1960s. The world is mesmerized by the magic of Teflon. The margins are astronomical, the stock is soaring, but deep inside DuPont's classified toxicology labs, the illusion was already shattering. The company's own scientists decided to run a few quiet experiments on animals. Just to be safe, they fed C8 to rats. They exposed it to beagle dogs. The results weren't just bad, they were horrifying. Livers swelled to unnatural, grotesque sizes. Tumors erupted. The animals died in agony. But perhaps the most terrifying discovery was what happened inside the blood. The scientists realized that C8 was a biological anomaly. It didn't break down. It didn't pass through the system. Once it entered the body, it stayed there, building up, year after year, a permanent resident in the bloodstream. By all legal and moral standards, this is the exact moment a company hits the emergency brake. You call the government. You shut down the production line. You warn the public. But DuPont was looking at a completely different set of numbers. To stop C8 meant stopping the money machine. It meant tearing down $1 billion monopoly. It meant financial suicide. So, the executives sat in their boardrooms. They looked at the dead rats. They looked at the skyrocketing profit margins, and they made a calculated choice, the ultimate corporate math. They decided that a few tumors were simply the cost of doing business. They buried the studies. They classified the documents, and they kept the factory lines running at maximum capacity. They wrote it off. Human lives were now just another line item in their accounting books, under acceptable losses. But hiding the truth from the public is one thing. Hiding it from the people actually making the chemical, that is a completely different level of cruelty. And the people on the factory floor were about to pay the ultimate price. Welcome to the Washington Works plant in Parkersburg, West Virginia. This was the beating heart of the Teflon empire. While the executives in their penthouses were burying the toxicology reports, the factory workers, the very people building this billion-dollar monopoly, were living inside the poison. C8 wasn't just a chemical in a tube. In the factory, it was a fine powder. It floated in the air like snow. It coated the workers' skin. They breathed it into their lungs for 8, 10, 12 hours a day. It didn't take long for the bodies to react. Workers began collapsing on the factory floor. Violent chills, blistering fevers, coughing up blood. They called it the Teflon flu. When terrified employees went to the company doctors, they were gaslighted. Handed a chilling corporate diagnosis, it's just a common cold. Go home, rest, and come back to the line on Monday. But a virus doesn't do what C8 does. In 1981, DuPont's own internal blood tests revealed a nightmare scenario. C8 wasn't just staying in the blood of their workers. It was crossing the placenta. It was transferring directly from pregnant women into their unborn children. Shortly after, the women working on the Teflon line started giving birth, and the anomalies began. One child was born with severe facial deformities, a jagged eye, a single nostril. A living, breathing casualty of a chemical their mothers were promised was perfectly safe. This is the moment where normal human empathy demands a halt. But remember the math. A product recall would cost billions. A public lawsuit would destroy the stock price. So DuPont executed a flawless, silent maneuver. They didn't sound the alarm. They didn't offer to pay the catastrophic medical bills for these deformed children. Instead, they quietly transferred all female workers of childbearing age out of the Teflon division. No explanations given, no medical warnings issued. They simply erased the evidence from the factory floor, swept the victims under the rug, and went right back to manufacturing the frying pans. For decades, this invisible monopoly of poison operated in total silence. They owned the town's economy. They wrote the safety regulations for the government. They truly believed they were untouchable. They had calculated every single risk and bought their way out of it. But their psychopathic math had one massive blind spot. They calculated the cost of human lives, but they forgot to calculate the wrath of nature. And just a few miles down the river, a simple cattle farmer was about to discover a toxic graveyard that would burn their billion-dollar empire to the ground. Just a few miles downstream from the Washington Works plant lay a massive plot of land. It was owned by a cattle farmer named Wilbur Tennant. For generations, his family had worked this soil, but in the late 1990s, the creek running through his property turned into a toxic graveyard. It started slowly. The water began to foam with a strange, unnatural lather. And then, the herd began to drop. Not one or two cows, hundreds of them. Their teeth turned pitch black. Massive tumors bulged from their necks. They went violently insane, charging at their owners before they finally collapsed. Wilbur Tennant knew exactly who was responsible. DuPont had recently bought a piece of land next to his farm to use as an unlined landfill for their chemical waste. He knew they were dumping something into the water. But when a simple farmer accuses a multi-billion-dollar chemical giant, the corporate machine doesn't negotiate. It crushes. DuPont's executives and lawyers didn't just deny it. They blamed Wilbur. They released reports claiming it was poor animal husbandry. They told the town he simply didn't know how to raise his own cattle. It was the ultimate display of corporate arrogance. They thought Wilbur Tennant was a glitch in the system. a nobody who would run out of money and just disappear. They were wrong. Enter Rob Bilott, a corporate defense attorney who actually spent his career defending massive chemical companies. But when Wilbur Tennant showed him VHS tapes of the mutated, dying cattle, Bilott crossed the aisle. He took the case against DuPont, and he triggered the legal equivalent of a nuclear bomb. Through a legal maneuver called discovery, Bilott forced DuPont to hand over their internal communications. The company fought it, but the judge ordered it. The executives thought their secrets were safe in that vault. They weren't. Box after box, thousands upon thousands of pages of highly classified internal memos poured into Bilott's office. And right there, hidden in plain sight, was the smoking gun, the ultimate proof of their psychopathic math. There were documents proving they knew C8 was toxic in the 1960s. Memos proving they knew it caused cancer. Records showing they had secretly tested the tap water in local businesses, confirmed the massive contamination, and actively chose to say absolutely nothing. The decades of lies were laid bare on a lawyer's desk. The perfect corporate crime was finally exposed to the daylight. But if you think getting caught means facing justice, you don't understand how billions of dollars work. When the mountain of evidence finally reached the government, the Environmental Protection Agency had no choice but to step in. In 2005, the EPA handed down what was, at the time, the largest civil administrative penalty in the agency's history: $16.5 million. To a normal person, $16 million is a fortune, a crushing blow. But to DuPont, it was a sick joke. It was the equivalent of a parking ticket. It was roughly the revenue they generated from selling Teflon in just a couple of days. This was the ultimate punchline to their psychopathic math. The executives had gambled with millions of human lives, poisoned an entire planet, and covered it up for 40 years, and the math checked out. The fine was infinitely cheaper than doing the right thing. Crime at the highest corporate level didn't just pay, it built empires. Under massive public and legal pressure, DuPont and 3M eventually agreed to phase out C8. They paid out settlement money. They tried to wash their hands of the scandal. But don't go throwing a parade just yet. They didn't stop manufacturing non-stick chemicals. They didn't shut down the money machine. They simply tweaked the molecular structure ever so slightly to evade the old regulations. They replaced C8 with a new family of forever chemicals. One of them is called GenX. They promised the world it was safer. But early scientific studies are already pointing to a terrifyingly familiar conclusion. It shows the exact same toxic properties. The name changed. The game didn't. That indestructible poison is still in the water. It's still on the waterproof jacket in your closet. It's still in the frying pan sitting in your kitchen right now, and it is still in your blood. The companies that put it there are still making billions, and they are already budgeting for the next acceptable loss. If you want to understand the real forces shaping our world, the billion-dollar cover-ups, and the psychopathic math running the global economy, you're in the right place. Welcome to the breakdown. Subscribe before they cover up the next one.